I would like to see anyone, prophet, king, or god, convince 1,000 cats to do the same thing at the same time. Neil Gaiman. Bending, Not Breaking. Season 5, Episode 4. Civil Wars Part 2. And we're back with another episode of Bending, Not Breaking.
Back for another episode.
We're right here. We're doing good.
We're here.
We're here.
Right now.
Right now.
Loving
We're doing
it. Loving it.
I appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you being here.
It didn't take much persuading you, though. You like doing this.
I do like doing this.
Very easy to persuade you on this.
Yeah. Pretty easy.
Yeah.
I feel like I was doing most of the persuading, actually.
Of getting me here?
Yeah.
I'm a busy person.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things we do.
I had to persuade you.
And life is a thing.
You know, life is a thing.
Life is a thing.
Life is a thing.
And we're getting to the holidays.
We are getting the holidays. We have not figured that out yet.
We're gonna do a lot of recording here in the near future.
Yeah, and it's likely that we're gonna ask you for grace and thank you for that.
Yeah.
Might come out with episode.
Yeah.
We might take a break. We might take a holiday break.
Who knows?
Yeah, we haven't decided yet. It might happen. It might not.
But
it depends on guests.
Yeah.
Actually, that's what we're waiting on.
At the end of the day, I don't feel as bad. I'm not like Unalak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not
what
the
do you
villain
mean?
here.
Oh, you don't feel like the villain here?
No. If we have to miss an episode, I'll feel bad, but not like the way Unalak should feel. You know?
Yeah. Totally.
I'm passing judgment. That's
Remorse.
a very judgy thing.
I think it's a fair judgment call.
He's got some things he's working on.
Yeah. So, okay. Today we're talking about
Civil Wars Part 2.
So we just had a really
not the
awesome
band.
guest, right? Last week we had an amazing
The different
guest.
John Oliver.
Yeah, John Oliver, not the person who's the media guy.
People who read the episode title were like, John Oliver's on Bending, Not Breaking? Different John Oliver.
No, but just as amazing, though.
If you know that John Oliver, like,
really
why
cool.
not?
Yeah.
He voiced Zazu in The Lion King.
He did. Yes.
The better Lion King.
Yes.
The live action one.
Anyway.
Which, like, is it live action when it's majority of it, almost 99.8% of it is CGI? Can you call it live action at that point, or is
That's a great question.
Is it just still animated?
It's still
like
animated.
It's still spectacular, right? But
yeah,
and takes skill
for sure.
But can you call it live action?
There is some live action.
There's in The Lion King.
No, there's not. Is there?
No, like a river is about the only thing that they really.
That's live footage.
That one thing.
Yeah, not ideal. Anyway,
I would call it animation, but hey.
Yeah. So we're talking about that episode we already talked about. It's, Civil Wars Part 2, but we're also talking about it through a specific lens.
Yes.
What's that lens?
We went with persuasion.
Persuasion.
All
right. Persuade me of the definition.
So, here's what I pulled up, which is not like a Webster's definition. This is a Wikipedia definition.
Ooh, interesting.
Changed it up. Thought it was
bold
a little
move.
bit more
Let's see how it turns out.
Persuasion can attempt to influence a person's beliefs, attitudes, intentions, motivations, or behaviors. That's what it is. Things that attempt to influence a person's beliefs, attitudes, intentions, motivations, or behaviors. I would also throw, like, you try to persuade, and you can persuade animals, right?
Yeah,
I try to do that with my dog all the time.
It doesn't have to be people, right? You can persuade things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So that means there's a lot there, influencing all of those different aspects of the person.
Nothing really to unpack, I think. Pretty cut and dry.
Yeah? Super cut and dry?
Yeah.
Well, then let's just skip this episode.
Yeah, no, yeah, everyone's got it.
All right, we're going to move to the devotion.
Be persuasive.
Yeah.
What's the difference between persuasion and manipulation? Or is manipulation a form of persuasion?
I think in the umbrella situation,
Square rectangle.
Manipulation would be a form of persuasion. Yeah. That's kind of how that's, listeners, if you have a different construct of how that would work, let us know.
Tell us.
Teach us.
So we can learn.
Yeah. We're going to kind of operate through the model of learning about persuasion and talking about it, and we may or may not be right.
I've got I brought in some resources.
I brought in some,
I've got an article I want us to look into.
some anecdotes.
Yeah.
You brought an article?
Yeah. I'm prepared, Ben.
Well, tell us about it.
To be prepared for persuasion, you have to be prepared.
prepared.
More Lion King. You know Jeremy Irons didn't sing that whole song?
I did know that, actually. Yeah, it comes in at the very end.
Yep. Some, Disney.
Couldn't hit the high note.
Not like that Notre Dame high note.
No, but
Underrated.
I do
Underrated music.
love Jeremy Irons.
Yeah. He nails it. Scar's great.
It's just
As a villain.
truly exceptional.
Not like great as like, well, Scar's great.
Yeah.
But like,
I love Scar.
Scar's such
yeah.
what a down-to-earth
Yeah.
lion. Okay. So, yes, I brought an article. So Let's look at it.
What article did you bring?
Well, because
I didn't read it.
so this is an article from Forbes.
Forbes.
I believe that
Interesting.
a magazine about money probably has a skewed bias
That
on
sounds.
what it means to be good to be persuasive.
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
And this author, who is a financial advisor and CEO,
Yep.
but classifies himself as an entrepreneur, which are there entrepreneurs in the world? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are there good moral entrepreneurs in the world?
Sure.
100%. Is it just me, or is it kind of a red flag when someone's like, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm like,
I don't know. It depends.
does that mean you want to exploit people for your own personal benefit?
Maybe, but maybe not.
I don't know. Anyways, so
Something
the
to think
21
about.
principles of persuasion. These are the
21.
21 things that you're going to be.
Are we doing all of these?
Maybe we'll go through them fast.
Okay.
It will be speedy,
All right, let's do it.
and maybe we can look at like moments of Avatar through whether or not we agree with this.
Yeah. Sure.
The first one is persuasion is not manipulation. That's the first one. Persuasion is not manipulation.
Oh, so we're changing our thought process from earlier.
I would say manipulation. I still think that that's saying like a rectangle's not a rectangle's not a square. Sure.
Uh-huh.
But a square is a rectangle.
Yeah.
So I think that's how I would put that under. Manipulation is coercion through force. Persuasion is the art of getting people to do things that are in their own best interest and your best interest.
I'm already.
I don't like it.
I'm already don't liking this.
Yep. 2, persuade the persuadable. Seems black, that seems.
This is a principle of persuasion.
Yeah, persuade the persuadable.
So don't try to persuade people who aren't persuadable.
According to this.
But what about the people that need to be persuaded that, quote, aren't persuadable?
Maybe you got to find we got to wait for them.
I'm finding lots of flaws. Let's keep going.
Context and timing is important.
That seems true.
That's for most things in life.
Yeah.
Context and timing.
For everything.
You have to be interested to be persuaded. That seems like the same tenet as number 2.
Yeah, this seems. I don't know if I feel. Tell me more.
Reciprocity compels.
I can get behind that.
Yep.
Yep.
Persistence pays off.
Persistence. Interesting.
I think if someone sets a firm boundary,
You should stop.
You should respect it.
Yeah, respect boundaries.
I feel like this can be taken the wrong way.
Yeah, that's.
Compliment sincerely, because we're positively affected by compliments, and that'll get people to do the things you want them to do.
That sounds like it could be a form of manipulation, but not by their definition. Okay, let's keep going.
Set expectations.
I like that.
Don't assume things.
Oh, I like that too.
Yeah. Create scarcity.
You said that with a tone of voice.
Create scarcity.
Tell me, why did you say that with such disdain?
Because when reading this article, we want the things because other people want things. If you want somebody to want what you have to make that object scarce, even if that object is yourself. That also feels manipulative.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
That has a negative connotation. If it's not scarce, then don't make it scarce.
I agree.
Share it.
Sharing is caring.
Right.
But as a means of persuasion, I'm going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not available
But
that
I classify that as manipulation.
I agree.
Right?
I think
Especially if
that's
you're doing
fair.
that with goods and services, right?
Yeah. Oh, this product that you want. Sorry, it's not available when I have 20, 30 of them ready to go. And you're just like, oh, but we need more people to
Do
want
we see
it.
Unalaq do that?
Mm.
And here's what makes me think: mentorship. Are we going to make mentorship scarce?
Oh yeah, I am the only one who
Right.
can give this to you.
Correct.
That's a form of creating scarcity.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Good point.
And sending people away, right?
Yeah.
That might be able to offer guidance later.
So note, this is something that I don't recommend doing. However, it did work.
Yeah, we're gonna have conversations about. I've
What
got
works
highs and
for-
lows,
like, this is
and
what
like
we
what
should
you
do,
should like,
or,
what,
like,
and-
means
'cause-
of persuasion.
And again, we talked last week about like should not being a thing, but
I agree.
But I think
I love that.
right.
Don't do it.
However,
You shouldn't use the word should. Get it?
you should treat people kindly. I
You
think
said
that should be like you should treat people kindly, right? You know what I mean? So
Interesting.
create urgency. Got to do this now. These are things that we see Unalaq do.
Yeah, well, I also think creating urgency is helpful, especially if there is something that is important that needs to get done.
Right, so that could almost be a tool, right?
Like that is.
Hey,
let
this
me.
deadline needs to get done.
It's like
We're
let
gonna
me
create some
show
urgency
you
around it.
why this is urgent and create that urgency so that you can see it. Now, if I falsely create
All
urgency,
these demon spirits.
then that seems manipulative.
Images matter.
Tell me more.
Show pictures.
Oh, visuals.
Visuals.
Okay.
Visualize.
Visualize
your
destiny.
Truth tell.
Yes.
Tell the truth.
Sure.
However, this is what they write. Sometimes the most effective way to persuade somebody is by telling them the things about themselves that nobody else is willing to tell them.
That sounds like it's more like on the brutally honest rather than the
Compassionately honest.
compassionately honest. Yeah.
Right?
Interesting.
Truth
so,
tell.
So Forbes, I'm not loving this.
Build rapport.
Rappert.
Which, like, but you have to do that by mirroring and matching others' habitual behaviors.
Interesting. So, actually, we're going to talk about that in this episode.
Okay.
We're going to come back to that. But imitation is something I want to bring up.
Behavioral flexibility.
Okay.
It's the person with the most flexibility, not necessarily the most power, who is in control. Children are often so persuasive because they're willing to go through a litany of behaviors to get what they want.
Yeah. Okay.
You should not do that, though, right?
Yeah.
List off, like, pouting, crying,
Yeah. Let's
throwing tantrums.
Let's say that emotions are not good, and then reprimand people for expressing them.
learn to transfer energy.
Tell me more.
Some people drain us of our energy while others infuse us with it. The most persuasive people know how to transfer their energy to others to motivate and invigorate.
Sounds like they're making me, as an introvert, into an extrovert.
Sometimes it's as straightforward as eye contact or physical touch.
That's culturally a thing, and
Um,
that's something to pay attention to in your culture
But also,
and
like,
your context. And
Some people don't want your physical touch.
exactly, that's why I'm saying it's important to pay attention to context.
Communicating clearly is key. We agree.
I love communication and clear communication.
Being prepared gives you the advantage.
Be prepared.
Does that not insinuate that if you're on the receiving end, then you're at a disadvantage?
If someone is not prepared.
Well, it says like if being prepared gives you the advantage in a situation where you're trying to be
what
persuasive.
this is the way they're framing persuasion is it's a zero-sum game in which one person will lose and the other will gain.
But the first thing they said is like it should be for the other person's benefit and your benefit.
But the way that was written is
Correct.
counter to that.
Yep.
So
Detach and stay calm in conflict. Nobody is more effective than when they are on tilt.
I think that you can be attached and stay calm amid conflict.
Yeah, you need to be
don't think-
unemotional.
I don't think
It says unemotional. Be
I
unemotional.
disagree with that as a whole premise.
Use anger purposefully. Don't use emotion, and then the next one is
Use anger
use,
purpose.
use emotion.
Okay.
Most people are uncomfortable with conflict. If you're willing to escalate a situation to a heightened level of tension and conflict, then others will back down.
Oh.
So
That's a-
manipulation.
So I don't like this at all.
Isn't this article
Why
fun?
are we still using this?
Because capitalism. Forbes is great, right? And then confidence and certainty. Which, yeah.
I don't like certainty.
Yeah, there's no absolutes.
I don't think that it's good ever.
And I lift this up for a couple reasons.
This whole
One,
article.
Yeah. I think it's important to understand
The cultural.
that this is the cultural lens of what persuasion is.
Yes.
And there are millions of people
Yep.
are being taught this in lectures and in seminars and in like company picnics. Like these are the things that people are being taught to be
Trainings at Fortune 500s.
correct, 100%. And we're seeing some of these things that are actively harmful.
I see those things.
And so, but I think for us to recognize that culturally, this is still the mindset of what persuasion is. Now, there are things that you can do for persuasion, because we even said it. We said at the beginning, we think manipulation and persuasion can be umbrella in the same ballpark, but can be different.
I think so.
Based off of how you are persuading, based off of your kind of approach to persuasion and the purpose behind that persuasion, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm trying to persuade all of us to get into the best solution to a problem,
Mm-hmm.
I might have the best answer.
Well,
I also have to recognize that I might not, and let someone else persuade me to the right answer.
Well, what it does is it acts like what it's requiring of people in the conversation is a baseline of mutual purpose. I believe that we are going after the same thing and want to accomplish the same goal. If I truly believe that the other people in the room are after the same goal, then I am absolutely more willing to listen, right? Establishing mutual purpose and clarifying the end goal rather than the ego of like, no, I need to use my idea so that my thing looks better, right? That's important, right? And this is drawing from Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, right? This is like, you must establish mutual purpose, which is, that's from Crucial Accountability. There's a lot of books that we should reference. There's a lot of cool things that I can draw from.
Well, so how do you argue with this? Well, like this is what's being taught by CEOs. So who are we to argue with that? You know what I mean?
I can argue with it.
Right.
I have lots of data.
and I think that persuasion, there is a line of when do we let ourselves be changed? When do we let ourselves be persuaded?
Yeah.
When do we kind of put our foot down to continue to try to be persuasive?
Yeah.
But through that, there's also barriers and boundaries and things that we have to respect through processes. And so,
well, I think
one of their tools was don't try to persuade the person who's not looking to be persuaded. And I was like,
or
that's, depending on what it is, and maybe that's right. If someone's very adamant, like this is not the time for this conversation,
then go to the other principle of persistence is key.
Exactly, right? And so and yes, leadership has always had complexities to it and paradoxes, but that article doesn't feel good, and it's what's being taught.
Well, I think what's important...
That was like the #1 Google hit article.
Yeah, I think what's important here is to distinguish between like any context, right? So when we come up with language is inherently flawed because it is created, and we are incapable of capturing everything that exists.
We're fallible as humans.
Right? We are fallible people.
Yep.
And so anytime we attempt to do something and then claim that it encapsulates everything, we are inherently going to miss.
Yep.
Because we are in our context specifically located within like very particular settings and inherently incapable of capturing another's experience that is outside of that context, right? Which is why religion is such a problem, because often what happens is people claim that their contextual understanding of God is the only God.
Contextual,
right?
understanding.
And what happens is when you claim that your way is the right way as a fallible person, you are creating an ideology that is inherently idolatrous, and that's something that is really, for the people who are religious people, you'll be like, oh my God, but like that's why religion's so harmful, is people claim it to be universal when it's based off their personal context.
Yep.
Right? And that leads to really harmful.
Can be harmful, yeah. Very much.
Very
much
harmful.
Can be harmful.
And this is the same deal with persuasion, right? When you claim that this is the way to persuade, and you are certain, what you're doing is you're asking for for harm.
Yep.
Because it's going to happen.
Yep.
And so I think that we see that throughout this episode.
And let's do this, right?
Yeah.
Let's jump into the episode. But before we do that, you got 30 seconds on the clock, my friend.
Pretty sure it's your turn.
For a little bit of a recap. All right.
I'm pretty sure it's your turn.
I definitely went last week.
You say that.
And away.
But I think John
we
did it for you.
Go.
All right, so Unalaq lies to Korra's face, Bolin, relationship issues, Varric Julie in a platypus bear, Tenzin joins Iki's tea party, Bolin bribes wrong people, they, get engaged, and then trial is a fiasco and clearly biased, and Korra learns the truth about Unalaq, about scoring poop out of the judge man, and then, Kaya and Boomy make up, and then Team Avatar tries a prison break, but Unalaq gets in the way, and then Varric's all prepared with, a plane, and then they snag the prisoners, and then siblings make up, and then Tonraq learns the truth, and then Eska tries to kill everybody,
2,
and then they all run away.
You did the whole thing. That was pretty good. I felt like more time.
I thought I did pretty well.
You did great.
I think I nailed it.
Did you say scared the poop out of the judge?
Yes,
okay.
I did say that.
Okay.
Yeah, scared the poop out of the judge.
Yeah.
Naga man.
Yeah, scary.
I'm there's definitely poop in that man's pants at that moment.
So, what are the persuasion tactics that we see throughout this episode? Let's just list a few.
Let's start at the beginning.
Let's just list a few. What do we see?
Lying.
Lying.
Lying is a form of persuasion.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Literally the first thing out of Unalaq's mouth.
And we and do we not see that all the time?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Not even just lying, but like a blatant. Just a
blatant lie.
Just not even just like, oh, there's a truth here. It's
truth.
just a complete made up fact.
Well, and that's something that's interesting because Brene Brown talks about this.
Who?
In Braving the Wilderness.
Who?
It's a book. Have you read it? Have you heard of her?
Who?
Brene Brown, the color. But yeah, she talks about.
She just came out with a new book.
She did, Atlas of the Heart. I can't wait to read it.
Sponsor us.
Turns out I haven't read it yet. Surprise. But it's cool. Anyway, like BS as a form of this is Bill Bishop actually wrote a book on BS, and talked about how there's the truth, which is what is fact, what is real. There is lying, which is a denial of the facts, a denial of that, but it still acknowledges that there's a truth and you're lying despite it. Mm-hmm. And then there's BS, which is like, I don't care what is which way and when, I'm just going to make things up to benefit me.
Yep.
Right? To suit my argument. And, there's a mixture of lying and BS coming from Unalaq the whole time. Pretty much everything he says to Korra.
Yeah, just absolutely fabricated.
And let's be real, as a form of persuasion.
Or holds truth. Like, he'll say real things that happen, but
I think that's something that's different. I think I want to classify that differently, but I think that's absolutely a tactic for sure. But I think as one form of persuasion is to lie outright. One form is to create a story that benefits you and say it, and you might believe it's true. You might be like, I totally heard this. It's real, right? And that's called a confabulation, when you tell a lie honestly.
Yeah.
Right? But no matter what, saying something and asserting that it is the correct thing is a way to persuade people.
Well, and I also think of saying something that is the truth, but not saying the whole truth. You know what I mean?
Like omitting
portions
of the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
So, or things that aren't relative. In the trial, were you at this meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
you're guilty. Well,
Yep.
no.
No.
Because being at that meeting doesn't necessarily mean that they tried to go through with it, right? Like, that's not the same thing.
Yeah.
But nope, you were there. You were at the meeting, so clearly you're guilty, right? So
Absolutely.
that's a different thing.
Yep.
We see fear used as a manipulation tactic.
That was my next one.
Lots of
Absolutely.
it.
Lots of fear.
I hate it.
Especially from Eska.
Eska, Korra to the judge twice.
I called that something different, but yes, I think fear.
Intimidation.
Is there. Yeah.
But I would say fear is creating fear in the judge through intimidation is twice,
Yeah.
right? If you kill them, I'm going to kill you.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
What?
You take their lives, I'll take yours.
You see the judge's face of, huh?
Yep.
I
don't know if this is worth what I agreed to.
Unalaq.
Yep. And then Unalaq steps in to that moment, right? in a complete performative action and, plays the hero so playing the good cop
Oh my gosh.
in a manufactured way, right? So that performance was very persuasive.
It's almost like a political party that we have
Oh,
that does a lot of liberal things, maybe.
interesting.
Except not. I don't know. Strange. A lot
Performative
of performative tactics.
Yeah. So, like, saying you will do things
And then not
doing them.
Yeah. Interesting.
It will convince people, but then what I think that type of persuasion is lacking is like long-term credibility, right? That is a flaw of that persuasion tactic. Again, lying as a persuasion tactic has a flaw in that when you are found out, credibility is gone.
You would think,
You would think.
right? Like, because at a certain point, if you built just utmost trust in an individual, even though they've let you down time and time again, we stop. We don't stop. Sometimes we have relationships that are so important to us that we refuse to let those things persuade us, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
Getting lost in it. But do you see what I'm saying? Do you get what, like...
I don't know. It's making me think about like an example, and I'm not necessarily coming up with a great one. So
there are times where I think of children-parent relationships. Your parents are supposed to be there for you. It's supposed to be a positive relationship, and so over and over again, you let parents cross boundaries. You let parents talk to you in ways that we typically wouldn't maybe let others talk to us like that for a long period of time, or over and over again. Is that like, and that's clearly not every situation, but that's what it kind of equates to me, is letting a parent cross my boundaries because they're my parent and I feel like I have to have a relationship with them. I'm not saying me personally, but I feel like that is something that happens.
So I wonder if that's bleeding into another form of persuasion, and that's leveraging relationship to persuade.
Yeah.
Right? So leveraging the power and the relationship we already
we've
have.
been best friends forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude,
or
just do this thing.
I am your father.
Right.
I am like
you should do this
blood
because,
ties.
Yeah.
Right. But kind of harking on this like cultural emphasis on the nuclear family in a way, or whatever the cultural thing is of like, but friends are forever.
Right.
Right. And so I think that
friends forever. That's a Saved by the Bell reference.
I definitely think that can be a form of persuasion for sure.
Monetary.
Bribery. Yeah. I would love to be like persuaded by some money. If anybody wants to persuade me to do some good things, I would love to be bribed to do them.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah,
would you call a paycheck bribery?
I
don't know if this is not an argument that
I don't
have.
think I
I'm
would,
just curious.
because I think it's a mutually agreed upon contract, and I don't know that bribery always is. Like, again, I want square rectangle.
Because maybe, right? Like, we definitely have heard of people taking jobs that are morally questionable because of salary.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder if that is that's interesting. I don't know. So again, I would love to hear someone's perspective on this. Feel free to send us a voicemail to thearkofe@gmail.com to help us flesh this conversation out, because I don't have the answer.
Yeah, that could be a very long discussion.
Yeah. Yikes. Interesting, though. But yeah, Boleyn here drops the ball also. Like, totally does not have
the
skill to identify who perhaps could be bribed
and I think
in this situation.
Shows, we're clearly rooting for that team, right?
Yeah, we
That's
are.
who we're rooting for.
Because there's corruption on the other side.
But this is a form of corruption, right?
Yeah.
Now, even if it's done,
it's means ends.
They're saying, the ends justify the means by saying these are good people who are innocent people. So if we have to bribe someone to get them free, then like, cool. And like in that situation, maybe.
Well, and again, it's one of those things where will it serve purpose to solve the short-term problem? Yes. Will that action end up being a long-term solution to this problem? No, it will not, because it will just create more corruption.
And I think this goes back, and this isn't specifically, this is with the bribery we see here. I also would say that this equates to the fear-based persuasion that we see throughout the show.
Mhm.
There are times where it is effective, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to cause long-term harm, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
You can take the appropriate amount of time to do something, the reasonable amount of time to do something on the front end, or you're going to have to spend the unreasonable amount of time dealing with something on the back end.
Yeah, you've said that once or twice.
It's one of my favorite, but I find I don't speak absolutes, but that is like I view that as like an absolute law.
As a core of your being.
Because I think of parenting, not parenting. I think of child and youth development. I'm not a parent, so I'm not going to speak to parents.
Yep.
I could easily convince a child to do something that is beneficial for them through fear.
Yeah. Or shame.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
If you run out there, you could die. Like, right, that would be persuasive.
Yes.
That would also likely cause harm over
Potentially
time.
trauma.
Especially if I was doing that repeatedly.
Correct.
And so what we see is people sometimes...
Nobody will love you if you wear that to school.
Correct, right? And so we do that, and we see those things happen. We see this fear-based persuasion happen, and it works. And
Abuse
so parents go,
as persuasion.
and people say, I'm gonna use that, right? Like spankings.
Yeah.
That got my child to stop screaming in the supermarket.
It works, therefore.
As opposed to, I don't have the time for this. I need to talk to this child right now and take the 2 minutes to figure out why they're crying.
Yeah.
I feel like that's coming off super judgmental, so I apologize if that's
Well,
the case.
I think
it really isn't, but it is one of those things of, as I work in youth development, I teach counselors and support staff and people who are working with kids regularly. Fear-based isn't going to get you. You need to. I want them to understand that there are consequences.
Yeah.
Allow them to understand consequences to certain things.
Yep.
But that is not necessarily coming at them and being like, you need to be scared of this, right? In the context, there's a big difference between if you do that, I'm calling your parents and they're going to be so mad versus like, hey, here are your options, and if you don't listen, here's a consequence to that option, and here's your other option, and here's the other consequence. One could be positive, one could be negative, but I'm going to let you make that choice, right? That is a very different tactic than...
You're speaking about choice theory.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people recommend.
So, but we see that. So fear-based, while Korra uses it and it is effective, if she tries to do that for her entire life through multiple relationships, that is eventually going to become like a very negative thing.
Absolutely.
And very quickly.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was getting to with that long rant.
Yeah. I mean, abuse is effective. And there is so much data that suggests
how harmful
that
it
is so harmful long term for everyone.
Well, I would just put that with fear-based, and we do it to ourselves. The reality is
Absolutely. When culture tells us something and we begin to believe the cultural message, for instance, I might reference purity culture for people who are emerging from like religious contexts that focus on like the purity of the body. And if you're like, a teen and in experiencing your hormones and living a natural life, and you're told that everything that you are naturally feeling is going to condemn you to hell, so to speak, that's pretty harmful. And that's a form of abuse and religious trauma, right? And so it's not...
I had flashbacks to my youth, and I hated it.
What's scary about
that
is that you don't even have to be a part of that religion to be affected by it.
Yeah.
You can be outside of the religion. You can be an atheist having your heyday, and you can still be culturally indoctrinated into this message of believing that
you're terrible because
you're terrible because
you
did
this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's pretty dangerous.
You shouldn't do that. Well, and we do it culturally with so many things, right?
So many things.
If you hook up with someone after the first date,
yeah,
you're a bad person.
You're less than.
You're less than.
Yeah. Shame.
Yeah.
It doesn't long term.
It's a fear-based
work.
tactic. Correct.
And there's
causes
data
harm.
to prove that
Oh,
too.
goodness.
Yeah.
The things, the tangents we could go off. I'm realizing persuasion was
This is a loaded
discussion.
Lens. So, can we let's move
more in the episode.
Let's move towards what are some positive ones that we notice in here?
Oh my god, engagement, being present.
Tell me more.
Right, so Tenzin messes up.
This is a
masterpiece. But he does it so well right here.
Yeah, he does. I agree.
And just recognizing that to get Iki home safe, to get her to a place where she's comfortable and like requires him to be present
Mm-hmm.
and engaged in what she's doing, and then allowing for that conversation and moment to develop. And then even she gives a little back to him, which is such a nice moment of he's like, well, these are your siblings and they do all these great things, and she's like, well, your siblings do these great things, and he's like,
Well, she says she goes first.
she does
and
go first,
then
and then he
goes.
says it.
And that's important for we talked about imitation earlier.
Yes.
Briefly, but this is there's a story I learned about, an anecdote about a man who believed he was a chicken, and so he acted like a chicken. He was like pecking the ground like a chicken. He was acting and doing everything as if he were a chicken because he truly believed he was a chicken. And so like people tried to be like, hey, you're not a chicken, you should come out from under the table. And that didn't work because he thought he was a chicken. So he's going to keep going. And then what happened is other people would try other things. They tried like X, Y, and Z, and it didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work until a rabbi comes along. And what he does is he starts to imitate this man and acts like a chicken. He acts like the chicken. He becomes the chicken, and he does the same thing that the man is doing. And then every now and then he stops after doing it and imitating him for a while. He starts to question and be like, I don't like sitting like this. And then the other guy looks up and is like, starts to, since he's looking at another chicken, he starts to be like, oh, if he's a chicken and he says that, can I see that too? And then he keeps going, and then he starts to say, I'm kind of hungry and I'm not interested in the seed anymore. I kind of want this. And then the guy looks up, he's like, what? And then he starts to slowly ask questions and become a part of it, and comes at it from the man's level, and eventually the man listens to the rabbi and they come out from under the table. And it's really interesting because it's all through this mode of imitation. And I see that process from Tenzin here from the very beginning. Can I join you? Iki's like, I'm mad. Tenzin's like, I'm mad too. Iki's like, my siblings are the worst. Tenzin's like, mine are too. Iki's like, I really like these group of people. He's like, I like them too. And so he repeats her and models her language the whole time. And it is only after Iki is like, oh, but I love Kaya. I love Boomy. And then Tenzin's like, oh, well, I love Milo. And I love Janora. And again, this whole track until she's like, you're right. We're in this together. And then, oh, I got chills. I just got chills. It's incredible.
Well, and notice that like that is an example because it's my favorite moment. It arguably might be my favorite moment in
The
Korra,
show. Yeah.
right? Like if not even Avatar. I love this moment so much. It is very easily my high of the episode, right? So,
Yeah.
And what you're seeing is you're seeing him take the time.
Yes.
You're seeing him put in the reasonable time on the front end.
Yep.
Then having to deal with the continuation of this conflict.
Then saying, come back.
You're coming with me, because then you're just like that
You
conflict's
ran
gonna,
away, young lady.
You solved the problem there, but it's only going to continue to grow until it's maybe something you can't solve, right? So you see him take the time in this moment. And it's beautiful. And I think what we're seeing here is what does persuasion look like when it's not fear-based?
Yes.
When it's out of love?
Yes.
When it's out of compassion?
Yes.
When it's out of connectedness?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're seeing what persuasion looks like in really beautiful moments, and it is the exact antithesis to the fear-based persuasion that we see throughout the entire episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think if I were to put it into a headline, I'd say the power of imitation lies in its capacity to help the person you're imitating be seen and feel understood, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is really interesting because there's a lot of science behind imitation in infants, right? And parents imitating children. And what that establishes is a sense of self. And what you're literally doing is saying, by seeing you, I am acknowledging your humanity. And that's what's happening in this situation. I am by imitating I am acknowledging that you exist, that you're real. I hear you. I understand you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's being communicated through that imitation. And I think that can be leveraged in a very harmful way. And in this example, it was profoundly amazing and important and amazing. It's so good. It's so good. Sorry.
Well, we've seen the opposite of that, right?
Sure. Tell me more.
I'm gonna go with the NRA, right?
What?
In the negative way. We've seen
Okay.
the opposite of that, right?
Okay.
So, hey, I'm scared. You're scared. Buy a gun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Those moments are right there.
That's
Hey,
a great example.
hey, you don't have a lot of money. People want to tax you. I don't have a lot of money. I don't want to be taxed.
Yeah.
Policies that support that.
Absolutely.
Right? The fear is taxation.
Yeah. Right? So it can be, again, very much saying that can be used in a negative fashion.
Right.
And this is a great example of how powerful it can be to use it for good.
Fear, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Um,
God, I love that moment.
It's so good. Yes. So good. Other options that I think are helpful and can be used well is logic.
I read a quote when I was looking for quotes on this, and it says, "You can't logic your way out of a situation that someone didn't logic their way into."
That's so true. Oh no.
And so the thought being that, like, if someone has this deep belief in
Rooted in a lie or
rooted in a lie
BS.
or BS, that you're never going to be able to pull them out of that using that tactic, right? The
Interesting.
tactic of logic, data, things like that.
Fascinating.
It's kind of like moving the elephant.
Yeah, and so that's referencing Switch.
Yes.
Right. Chip and Dan Heath, I think, wrote that. And
Yeah. Not Click.
there's
Switch.
There's the rider, the elephant, or is it Ori and Ron Brofman? No, I think they wrote Click. You get me confused. I think it's Chip and Dan.
Click
Heath.
is a different book. We're
Um,
talking about Switch.
Yes.
It's also a movie.
Anyway.
Continue.
Yeah, so that's the rider, the elephant, and then shaping the path are forms of persuasion,
Right.
right? It's forms of creating change, and I think that's important. Yeah, and acknowledging those things, like the emotional side, the
Is the
logical
elephant,
side.
right? You've got to be able to move the emotional side before
yeah,
you move the logic.
The logic controlling an elephant that's like scared is not going to work,
Correct.
right? If
No, you don't need to be scared of a mouse. Logically, that's very silly.
yeah, the rider's not going to be helpful.
That's
Very
not a
small
thing.
human on a very large elephant.
Yep. Not a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's important. But I think that we do see logic, and we see Tone Rock do that at the end of this episode, right? So, like, why shouldn't we retaliate against the North? Well, the South would get crushed, right? If we do retaliate and with force, then
We're done.
there's no way to
Yep.
win if we do it that way,
Yep.
right? And a real live example of that is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That was his whole stance and why nonviolent resistance was so important, because if we use violence, then we're gonna be there. We won't exist if we use violence,
Right.
and so that's why nonviolent tactics were so important there. See Andre Henry's episode. He has a book coming out, by the way.
Can't wait to read it.
You
Friend of the
should
podcast.
pre-order that. Yeah,
Yeah.
friend of the podcast. Recommend.
What's the title of the book? So we can go pre-order it.
To all the white friends I couldn't keep. And there's a subtitle, but I do not recall. But it's about social justice, and I highly recommend it. Yeah.
A lot of books referenced today.
Love
that.
That's my thing. But yeah, I like that quote though. Can't logic your way into something, or your way out of something that someone didn't
logic
use
their way
logic
into.
into
Yeah.
their way. That's interesting. I like that a lot. What else? Others?
What else did I write? I think it's a big takeaway point, because I think that, as we're looking at this episode, the questions that popped up for me is, all right, so persuasion, not necessarily good or bad, right? There's so many things that we've talked about that
Absolutely.
are tools.
It is a tool in the toolbox.
It is-
It's exactly what it is.
And how you use the tool, it determines the...
And whether you should use the tool.
Correct. And I think that's... So when the questions that I walk away with that I don't think we're coming to an answer in this episode, so sorry, y'all. When is it okay to let yourself be persuaded? When do we even recognize that, right?
Interesting question.
Because, Iki could have put her foot down. You know what I mean? Like, and
Sure.
she's not as aware of this in this moment as it's happening, but she let herself kind of get to that point through being open, listening, being engaged in that experience. That's not always the case, right? Some people are going to put their foot down. Sometimes I'm going to put my foot down.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when I have an awareness, it's like, don't do that. Like, right? So, I get silver lininged at work,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm like,
No, thank you.
don't do that. That doesn't feel good right now. Don't do that. Um, and so when do we put our foot down, and when do we allow ourselves to kind of be persuaded is a question that pops up for me. Why are we trying to be persuasive? I think is important.
Because we think we're right.
Yeah, I think if you realize you're trying to persuade someone to do something, the context as to why is important.
Yeah,
And
I
so
think,
often we ask the question, the awareness piece is half the battle, right? So,
yeah, and I think that's a really good point to consider is like to ask that question of ourselves and say, why am I trying to persuade this person of this thing? And if you can answer that, that will be very helpful for you to establish mutual purpose with the other person. Hey, I want to convince you about this because I believe that X, Y, and Z is at stake.
this is going to seem minuscule, but this is a moment because I think one of the other things is it worth trying to persuade you of this?
Sure.
Love watching movies. Have for my entire life.
Sure.
One of the things that I used to be really bad about was trying to convince people that good movies were good movies and bad movies were bad movies.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm asking myself why, majority of the time I was like, this doesn't matter. I don't care if you don't like that movie. I don't care if I don't like that movie.
Yeah.
It brought you joy. My caveats will always be like, is that a harmful movie or is it a harmful show or does it cause harm in a way? And if you are perpetuating that harm, stop it. But other than that, yeah.
What harm is there in liking a certain movie?
Yeah, correct.
Or liking a certain genre, right? A lot of people judge people who watch like anime in general, right? Oh, you watch anime? Right? I can't like spend time with you, right?
Well,
And
it's huge in fandoms, right?
and
People who don't like Korra.
yeah.
No, you shouldn't like Korra. Because it's not good. You shouldn't like Korra, and you're dumb for liking it.
Yes.
Why? Why are you trying to persuade me of this? Like, what
This is bringing me great joy.
what good?
Why?
What good is it doing? And so I think that's a real question because we do it often. I did not want to listen to Taylor Swift's 3-hour album. It might be good. I just wasn't interested in listening to it.
Same.
Do I need to convince anyone that they also shouldn't listen to it? No.
No.
Right?
No. Are there other things that might be worth doing that? Yes.
Oh, there are certainly albums and people that when someone says like I listen to this, that I'm willing to say like I don't,
Here's why.
and here's why. Because that person does this,
And
I don't want to give them money.
But I think
right?
what you need to let we, not you, but what we need to allow room for is saying, "Hey, I'm going to offer this to you, but whether you pick it up or not is up to you."
Right.
Right? And it's one of those things where it's my responsibility to say something for my integrity to let you know that this is a thing that is problematic about what you're putting your faith in, and you're not like my responsibility. I'm just offering this to you because I think that it's important. And again, whether you pick it up or not is up to you.
Yeah. So why are we trying to be persuasive? And then the other question I think is deeply important is how are we trying to be persuasive?
Yeah,
If we are trying to do it through fear, that's a red flag.
I agree.
That's a red flag. And it doesn't mean like, because there's sometimes where it's like, please don't cross the road. You could get hurt.
Yeah.
I don't want you to get hurt.
Yep.
I love you. I care about you.
Yep.
Already by saying those things, you have taken what is fear-based
Yep.
and turned it into something that is through love and compassion and support, just by wording it that way.
Yeah.
Versus, like, if you walk in the street, you will die by getting hit by a car.
Which may or may not be true.
But that is already shifted into the fear mindset of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does it's a balance. But how we are persuading and why we are persuading, very two important questions.
And I think for those of us who come to this like boundary where it's like this is the only tool that I have is fear, maybe, right? This is the only tool, and I don't like Korra, for instance.
That is the tool she knows.
That is the tool she knows.
That's
It's
what
the
she
tool
knows how to do
has.
it.
It's because she is a very powerful bender and very powerful and has her stuff together and has Naga in general. And so she's used to leveraging that power to get what she needs because it has worked for her. And so when we have these tools in our tool belt that continually get used because that's the only one we have, of course, why would I blame somebody from using a hammer to do something that requires another tool, right? When that's the only tool they know how to use, right? It's like people need to do things. They need to feel this. We talked about agency and how empowering that is, right? If you remove that, of course people are going to get hurt.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you think about it in a different context, like at literal tools,
Yeah.
hey, you need a screwdriver, not a hammer.
You need a
Well,
saw.
Are you giving me a screwdriver? No. Then I'm going to have to use the hammer.
Yeah.
Versus, you need a screwdriver for that.
Yep.
I have a screwdriver.
Yes.
Here's how you use the screwdriver.
Yeah.
Now you get to choose whether or not you want to use the hammer or the screwdriver.
Yeah.
Right? And so that is a very...
I'm just more comfortable with the hammer.
Which is that is...
Yep.
Trying to convince people to like persuade people into like using new operating systems versus like...
Yeah. This tool is more efficient. It is better. And it is proven to be used in this way. And you are still going to not use it?
And so that's, again, reasonable time. I remember when I was working at a summer camp, we had to reshift the entire swim lake safety procedures. We had to do a bunch, right?
Yeah.
Because what
that
we were
sounds like it'd be terrifying.
What we were doing was fine, but it had a lot of gaps of like, if someone goes missing, we don't really know how to find them quickly, right?
Yeah.
So it took a lot of, but we knew that we couldn't just like make the change between summers and expect people to be on board with it. Why are we changing it? It was fine the way it was. So we had to survey people on what they felt like. We had to get input. We had to present different possible like...
You're establishing modes of credibility.
Right. And so here are some options that we have. You said you wanted this. Here's what we think might work. That pool of shared meaning, that shared purpose was the reason that more people were like... Buy in on what we were doing.
You got to motivate the elephant.
But we got to recognize
the rider.
We were leading... That was a massive change. And it came from a place of love. Yep. We want our kids to be safe. We want to make sure that we're taking care of them. We want to make sure that we're giving them what they need to be successful during swim time. The way we tried to persuade it was lifting it up to a group and bringing everyone in, and it was a moment of inclusion. Versus, if we don't do this, everyone will die. You have to do it or you'll get fired. We had a much better time navigating that change than what could have potentially happened.
Yeah, and just acknowledging the transparency in that as well, right? This is what we're trying to do. We want you to be on board. That's why we want your opinion.
Yep.
All the things. Again, we can be persuasive, and there are tools available. It just, again, it requires work on the front end in order to make it so that you don't have to continue to use fear-based tactics in order to accomplish what you need, which eventually won't work.
Well, and we see it not work, right? Unalak has used fear-based tactics the entire way, and then at a certain point, he still tries to use it, and Korra says, nope, I'm done.
Boundary has been found.
Yeah. You've been found out.
Yep.
The fear is no longer going to work, right?
Yep.
That happens. We see it dissolve there in the moment.
Yep.
Anything else?
Last thing?
Sure.
Pooping as a distraction.
Pooping as a distraction.
Yeah, pooping money, especially as a distraction.
Yeah.
That's going to persuade people to look the other way. Again, a different form of bribery, but distraction.
Misdirection.
Distraction as a means of persuasion, right? I'm going to distract you from what I'm actually trying to accomplish so that I can accomplish what I need to do.
Oh, and that happens.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
Do it all the time.
Yeah.
I don't do it all the time.
Oh, good.
Maybe.
All right.
Anything else?
Nope.
It's a good conversation.
There's a lot we could do, but it's just not worth it.
Oh, we don't have the time.
We don't have the time.
We don't have the time. No time.
No
We're going
time.
to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with a few of our favorite things.
These are a few of my favorite things. everybody. Welcome back. It is a pleasure having you still listening to the podcast. Thank you for not shutting us off yet. That's very kind of you. Maybe you did take a break. Who knows? Maybe you did shut us off for a little
Probably
while.
pause
But you
us.
came back.
If you listen to us on the commute, I assume that depending on how your commute is likely not 53 minutes.
Yeah,
right?
yikes. Or longer.
Or
right?
longer.
Anyway, here we
It could
go.
be. That is a commute.
That's a commute there. My commute's about an hour long just to school and back. Yeah. Anyway, so what we're doing now is we have a series of our final segments. Our first one is going to be our nooks and crannies of the episode.
What?
Yeah, nooks and crannies.
Which one's the positive and which one's the negative?
It's up to you.
I hate it. I hate it.
But you didn't like any of the other ones I've
I
given
like a
you.
breakfast nook.
So that's going to be the positive one.
Okay, we'll do
nooks. Yeah. So
Because I hate I've never heard
I feel
anything.
cramped in a cranny.
Yeah.
yeah.
Crawl space.
Ooh, cranny. Ugh.
Bedroom and crawl space. Cozy?
No. We're calling it nooks and crannies
Crawl
right
space.
now. I keep on testing titles.
Hate. Seriously, and this is a tangent, but anything
Hate's
under
a strong word.
hate. Anything under a house, you're not getting me to do it. My response is always going to be
Pay somebody to
pay
do
someone
it.
to do it. We don't have that money. I don't care. Pay some. If we have to get stuff out from under the house, nope. Don't. No.
Well,
I don't like being confined into small spaces, and then I hate creepy crawly
so
things.
crannies aren't good for you then.
No.
All right, interesting. Well, I
But
keep
a
on.
warm, cozy breakfast nook with a nice little breakfast sandwich.
So you're saying that this should from
Bagels-
now on be
bagels from
called
Brand
nooks and
Wines?
crannies because this is clearly the one that fits. I keep on trying new titles. And
maybe
you keep on
Brand
bashing
Wines
them.
Brand Wines will sponsor us.
Maybe.
It's a bagel place in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and it is
All right. Well, having not heard of Verdict, I might have to keep on trying new names.
Quite
but we'll
good.
see. All right. So
we should pick a new one every time.
that's what I've been doing. So yeah, because you keep on shutting them down.
How about I'll come up with a name next time.
Well, it can't be one that I've already used.
Done.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll pick a different name.
I've come up with all the easy ones so far.
Yeah. I'll
Okay.
pick a hard one.
Fine. Okay. Let's start with nooks.
Let's tart with a
Let's
little
tart with
breakfast, like a
nooks.
little breakfast tart in our breakfast nook. Seriously, I like a good breakfast nook.
All right. What is your
Say breakfast
what's
nook one
your
more time.
breakfast
Breakfast
What is your breakfast nook for the episode?
It's the Tenzin Iki moment.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
so
such a. First of all, I'm a sucker for almost anything that has kids finding themselves
good.
and
Yeah. Or being heard and being seen.
I
and
saw
validated.
Encanto this past
the
weekend.
movie.
Yes, it's a movie, and there's a moment where
You can sponsor us too.
a child finds their purpose,
Mm.
and I'm just like, love those moments.
Yeah.
So sucker for that. So a moment where Iki feels seen, a moment where Tenzin is doing all the right things and being supportive, and it's just beautiful moment. Love it.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to pick mine, that would absolutely be it also. But for the
Stolen.
sake of choosing a different one, I really loved in this episode I had this wow moment with Korra and her bending. Just such an accomplished bender, and just the ease with which she goes into and out of the avatar state and has such, capacity to control it is something we don't really see in Aang's
Yeah.
era in his shows.
Not
and-
that he couldn't do it later
Oh,
in life,
yeah,
but we
absolutely.
don't see it in him as a 12-year-old.
And so I think we just see more powerful bending in a way from Korra more regularly. And I think this moment where she's on the plane and just has this massive amount of water displace these giant ships. It's super cool. And I
just immediately because she can go into it.
yeah,
Like,
it
she-
looked cool.
Yep.
It was I thought it was super neat.
yeah,
That was my high.
very
my
nice.
nook, excuse me.
Let's talk about those
Brecky nookie.
dirty crannies.
Dirty.
That sounded terrible. I hate that. I'm never saying that again. That felt bad.
Yeah, so my cranny
That felt terrible. Yeah.
is there's a lot of gendered language in this episode, and we didn't really talk about it yet. But
Okay.
there's just a lot of language from Korra about marriage, saying isn't the guy supposed to ask, pop the question, and there's this language of calling women crazy, and Varric does that several times throughout the episode.
Yeah.
And I really just that turned me off
Yep.
quite a few times, and I didn't like it. So that's my low.
Yep. Mine is
My cranny.
the amount of fear-based persuasion that we see from Korra. And this isn't to pick on Korra. It's her capacity for good is so
Immense.
immense,
Yeah.
and she lives into it so many times throughout the series.
Yeah.
And so I always want to see her do the best, but we stumble, we fall, we're fallible, and I think that that's a moment of that. But in that fear-based, and I feel like I'm harping on that this episode, but I think that is such a potent thing that we deal with, and so seeing her fall into that trap is one that I'm like, you can do better. And I believe in you, Korra, and
I see
you
your
got
potential,
that. Yep.
and I want you to live into it.
And so that's a moment where I'm like, I don't love that.
I hear you.
Not because it's a bad moment in the episode, just because I'm like, growth. Okay. So.
All right. So we're moving now into our
Little devotion.
Right? So this week we are analyzing our intentions through the lens of persuasion and the element of air. And this is kind of our gig. And what we're doing is we're setting an intention for this week. And again, we are asking that you do this at home. Like what is an intention that you want to set for yourself? Based off our conversation about persuasion, based off your own reflection and watching this episode about persuasion, and then the element of air and whatever that means to you. And so what we're going to do is we're going to tell you about our intentions, and we'd love to hear yours. Feel free to share them with us. Tweet at us. Use any of the Bending Not Breaking handles, BNB_pod on all the medias. Share it with us. We'd love to hear about it. So, Chun-Chine.
Yeah.
What is your intention?
Through air. Through the element of air. I'm going to do this with a little splash of water, but the water's not the important part. The air's the important part.
It's the water vapor.
When you're... what kind of pictured to me was when you are underwater and your lungs are full, but you slowly start to need air more and more and more. And what turns into calmness in the water turns into scrappy fight, do whatever you have to get your head above water. And I see that in the way that we treat people, in the way that I respond to people. And so making sure that I am doing things that are giving me air, that are giving me breath, that are life-giving, taking care of myself by doing those things and being around people that I love. And
wow.
So that when I'm making tough decisions, when I am navigating the world around me, that I am not...
You're doing it with your lungs full.
Exactly. Because what we see is, what I will revert to is fear-based persuasion.
Yeah.
Fear-based
in
tactics.
Moments of
whatever,
crisis.
I'm going to do whatever I have to get out of that situation.
Yeah.
And so making sure that I'm making decisions, that I am speaking with people and engaging with people through work or anything else with as much lung in my air as possible.
Lungs in your air?
Air in my lungs as possible. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my intention, is to make sure that I'm putting intentional moments this week on my calendar to give me breath, to give me air.
What's an example of one of those things?
I like rock. I've gotten really into rock climbing recently, and so making time to go climbing is one of those things. Spending time with friends that I love, not even just doing anything specific, but just going and getting dinner or
quality time.
Just quality time. I think those are things. And if I do those things, it makes the tougher decisions in moments where I don't have that.
Yeah.
Work where I'm feeling exhausted or whatever it might be. I'm hopefully going to be responding in a way that is not me scrapping and grasping for air, but as me calm and still. And so that's what I would like to. That's where I would like to get to this week.
No, I love that. Yeah, I heard recently from, I think, probably one of my classes, but when we are in crisis, we default to the system that we are in. And if the system we are in is not good, then we're going to default to that, whether it's in our values or not. Mm-hmm. But in moments of crisis, that's what our lowest rung is the system that we're in. And so that's kind of scary.
That make me feel good.
Yeah. Anyway, my intention thinking about persuasion and air is, you know, I often think about how we are like the air is this hurricane. It's wild. It has so much howling and it can be a gentle breeze also. And I think about all of these spaces that air can create and come from, and I think about the capacity that all of those things have to create change, and being able to access those different like types of air is something that I want to learn more about. So like what I'm kind of being called to do is to learn more about the tools that I have within my reach to do better. And I want to learn about like when is it appropriate to use a gentle breeze and when is it appropriate to maybe blow a little harder, right? When is it appropriate to whine a little bit as the wind howls through X, Y, and Z, and like when is it appropriate to do that, and like let myself say what's on my mind and what's bothering me and what's hard and complain, right? And so how do I lean into that, and what are the tools that I could be using better? And so I'm planning on, I'm done with exams starting tomorrow, and actually the day this airs, I will be done with my exams, and I'm going to read for pleasure, and I'm going to read a book that's been on my list for a hot minute. So that's what I'm going to do this week.
Sure, I've got a great Star Wars book recommendation.
About wind?
No, just a book that you can read for pleasure.
Oh, I'm reading, this is a nonfiction. I'm reading a lot of romance novels.
Oh, fun.
For my beach reads. So
I'm not going to make it through the Star Wars canon challenge for those.
You're turning in the towel already?
I'm done.
We're in December. You're almost there.
Except no, there was a slew of like 200 comics that come in one after the other, and they were all mediocre, and it killed me. I lost all motivation. It also started to feel kind of like a chore, and at that point, I was like, I committed to this early on, but I do not have to. This was for me, and it is no longer serving its purpose.
It's no longer for me. It is,
and so I don't feel the need to finish it, and I'm okay with that.
Wow. Well,
I might keep reading some of that stuff. I'm skipping the rest of the comics. If there's a Star Wars comic that is past Empire Strikes Back that you're like, oh, this is a must-read, then you can tell me that. But other than that, like I'm deleting my Comixology subscription. I do not care anymore.
Yikes.
Like I'll read all the books at some point, but I'm done.
Yeah, I hear you.
Oscar season's coming around. I want to actually watch those movies and other things. And
yeah, I hear you.
But hey.
Okay. Well, I'm grateful for that, and I'm also grateful for a character in this episode. But before I share, I want to hear you share.
Yeah, I am grateful for Julie.
Ooh, we haven't talked about Julie.
Yeah, because
often.
no one else is. Okay,
yeah.
So I'm gonna be grateful for her because Varric never really is. And I don't know, because my question is like,
not on screen.
Would I have ever been like persuaded to get into a platypus bear?
Under
Varric, and like make him.
How much is she getting paid?
Probably not a lot.
Man, I mean,
so like
I hope she's getting paid a lot
because like she goes through some abuse, right? So
you think
I want to give gratitude to her because she is a character that I like enjoy.
Yeah,
and I don't like seeing her mistreated. Gratitude to Julie. Because Varric doesn't give it to her.
Yeah, not nearly enough anyway.
No.
If at all, I guess. But yeah, I love that. I am grateful for Kaya. Because we didn't really talk about her either.
Oh my god. You're going to make me cry.
This moment with Boomy
is a tear-inducing moment for me.
Is so heartfelt. Because this is the moment where in last episode...
It's making me tear up now.
This is the moment where in last episode, she would have made a jab.
Yep.
And
she doesn't.
And that, a bit, like just that, hey, you are enough. And, it's just gorgeous.
It's two moments.
It's so real.
Well, because it's already a moment that even before she shows up, him talking to his dad. I just wanted to make you proud. I hope I did. That moment, you're just like, ah, there's so much pain
we
and
want
regret
that,
and
right?
shame and like,
Yeah.
he's getting to do these things. And for her to show up and say, you are enough. You made him proud.
Yeah.
Here's a hug. So simple and so meaningful.
And something well within our capacity that we so often deny.
We skip it. We don't think to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And something just by telling someone you're enough.
Yeah.
And giving a hug if they want one.
Yeah.
For 6 seconds.
At least. That's how long it takes the endorphins to kick in.
Things we know.
Yep. Wow. Well,
Love that moment.
This whole episode really is just a touchstone for awesome.
Yeah. One of the best core episodes, I think.
Yeah. So much going down.
And it's in season 2.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Korra haters.
Ugh. I will convince people that they should watch Korra.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I do. Yes. Okay.
Big thanks to everyone, especially our patrons, for supporting us. If you want to support us on Patreon, you can. There's
Y'all are
some
the
perks
best.
and freebies and things like that, including live episodes via Zoom that you can be a part of, episodes early, mini episodes that take place on Patreon, and a little bit more than that. So,
especially in December, we're putting out 3 mini episodes.
yeah,
this month
good amount of
alone
content
just for patrons.
Live episode coming out next Monday.
Yeah, for
So
our patrons.
So if you wanted to be a part of that, yeah, join on in.
It's not too late.
Not at all. It's not too late. It's never too late. Point.
Yep, BNB_pod at Patreon and on all of the social medias.
Yeah, all the things.
You should join.
Follow, rate,
That's
review.
me trying to convince you.
Follow, rate, review wherever you listen to podcasts. That's a huge help to us and an immense amount of support. If you don't want to support us through Patreon, that is another way to do it.
Absolutely.
Would love to.
And just tell your friends about us.
Yeah.
All your Avatar friends.
All the things. This has been a wonderful episode of Season 5, Episode 4, Civil Wars Part 2.
So many numbers.
That's right. It's a Part 2er.
Great.
Here we are. All right. I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
This has been...
And this has been Bending Not Breaking. Thanks for listening.